Welcome back. So this is my Polygon Siskiyou T8. Today we're going to be servicing the rear Freehub here. I've noticed some tightness in the rear wheel lately while I've been pedaling. So we're going to get this thing taken off the bike, get the cassette off, get the brake off, do a full service of the inside. We're going to replace all the bearings, clean everything up, re-lube everything, put it all back together. I've done a lot of research into this. This is one of Shimano's newer Freehubs. It's on the it's the Deore line, but it's part of the Microspline technology, which just came out in 2020, and it allows them to do a 12-speed cassette here. So there's not much out there. There's one other video I'll link in the comments that I've been referencing for this, and there's a little bit of confusion there as well. So I've created my own step-by-step guide using Shimano's documentation and some other resources that I found on how to fully rebuild the Freehub main part, and also take the body apart and rebuild that. Shimano doesn't have any documentation on that. They recommend that you buy a new one, but it's a couple of $2 bearings, so we're going to rebuild that as well and hopefully get this thing back to running like new. To perform this service, you will need a cassette lock ring tool, an adjustable wrench, and a chain whip to remove the cassette. You'll need a brake rotor wrench to remove the brake rotor. You'll need a pair of pliers to remove the right side end cap. You'll need a pick to remove various seal covers. You'll need a small 2.5mm hex wrench or smaller to remove the left side lock nut. You'll need a bearing press tool. You'll need a rubber mallet or hammer of some sort to remove the existing bearings. You'll need some degreaser to remove the existing grease from all the surfaces. Then you will need a multi-purpose bearing grease and a specific Shimano Freehub grease. You'll need some paper towels. And finally, you'll need two 6903 bearings, one 6803 bearing, and one 6802 bearing. The 6903 bearings are for the hub body. This is what Shimano gives instructions on how to replace. The 6803 and 6802 are for the Freehub body unit. The instructions from Shimano do not exist for these. That's what we're going to be covering as well in this video. The first thing we have to do is remove the wheel from the bike. Next, we need to remove the cassette from the wheel. Now we'll flip that around and remove the brake rotor. Back to the drive side here, we'll use our pliers to remove the end cap. It's on there a little tight, but it does just pop right off. It's a friction fit. If this is the first time you're removing this, it might be very tight. You can use vise or a different type of channel locks, whatever you need to try to pull this off here as hard as you can. Next, we'll remove the Freehub body. This might be a little tight as well if this is your first time removing it. And from there, we can remove the outer seal cover. We'll use a pick to remove the outer seal, being careful not to damage it. Then we'll remove this bushing. And that is the right side disassembly complete. Alright, so now we're going to remove the left side lock nut. To do that, insert your small hex wrench into the hole of the right side of the hub axle and use a crescent wrench or spanner to unthread the left side lock nut. Next, we'll use a pick to remove the left side seal cover, being careful not to damage it. And that is the left side disassembly complete. Alright, so now we're going to remove the left side bearing. To do that, we're going to need a mallet and something to sit around here to allow the bearing to come free. This is an old cap for an umbrella cover, I believe, but a big socket, a large piece of pipe, roll of duct tape, anything should work. Step one is to reinstall the right side end cap. Click that into place. We're going to use that to hit again so that we're not hitting the hub shaft directly. Then put your wheel onto your spacer, and we're just going to tap this out. And it's not moving at all. Interesting. All right, we're going to bring out the big guns here. The rubber mallet was bouncing. I think this piece of plastic isn't helping us much either, but that's definitely doing a better job of it. All right, left side bearing has been removed. All right, so now we're going to remove the right side end cap. We're going to push the hub axle through the left side, and then we're going to flip the wheel around and reinsert this so that what was the left side is now going to be facing the drive side, the right side, and we're going to use that to hit out the right side bearing. So same procedure. Put that there. Put your right end cap back on before you hit. All right, there is our right side bearing removed as well. All right, so this here is the drive side. You can see in there, these are the teeth that allow for the ratcheting mechanism from the Pawls of the Freehub body. The shiny surface in here is where your bearing is going to sit. We flip this around. This is the brake side. You've got this surface here where the bearing is going to go into. So let's get this all cleaned up, and then we can start the disassembly of the Freehub body unit. All right, so this is the Freehub body unit. Inside it is one 6803 bearing, one 6802 bearing, and then a spacer in the middle. What we're going to do is shift this spacer so that you can see the inner ring of one of the bearings. We're going to use a tool to hammer that out and get the left side bearing out first, and then we'll just flip it around and get the right side bearing out using the hub axle. Just like that. Then we can remove the spacer. Now we can get our hub axle. No, let's not do that. All right, we're actually not going to use the hub axle for this. We're just going to use the same tool again. All right. What we just removed is the left side 6803 bearing. The Freehub body unit is here. The inside bushing has a tapered spot on it. That tapered goes towards the outside of the Freehub body unit. Then on the right side, you've got the 6802 bearing, and then a right side seal cover. All right, so now showing the full disassembly in an exploded parts view. What we have here is the lock nut for the cassette itself, the right side end cap, the right side outer seal cover, the right side outer seal. In here we've got the subassembly of the Freehub body unit with a right side outer seal, the 6802 bearing, the tapered bushing facing towards the cassette, the body itself, and then the right side 6803 bearing. You've got the right side spacer that goes on the hub axle itself. You've got the right side 6903 bearing, the hub axle, the left side 6903 bearing, the left side outer seal, the left side end cap lock nut, then the brake rotor, and the brake rotor lock nut. The only thing we have left is we can remove these three Pawls here on the Freehub body unit. So those can just kind of pull off pretty easily. And those are held on by a C-ring that you can pull off as well. And now with everything disassembled, we can do a full clean so that we can start the reassembly process. All right, so now we'll use our degreaser and some paper towels to clean everything up as best as possible. Leave the brake off to the side here. You can clean your cassette as well if you'd like. Mine's not too dirty, so we're going to leave that one off as well. We're just going to clean everything inside of here. All right, and that's everything clean and ready for reassembly. And we can't forget the hub body itself. Let's get that cleaned out. All right, let's get it all back together. So for reassembly, we're going to need our Freehub grease, our multi-purpose grease, and for the Freehub body, our 6803 and 6802 bearing. We're also going to need our bearing press tool. All right, so we're going to get our bearings installed on our Freehub body. First thing we're going to do is get some multi-purpose grease and apply it to the bearing surfaces inside of the Freehub body unit. So Shimano calls out a specific Shimano grease for this. They call it their premium grease. I believe it's just a multi-purpose grease. This is just going on the bearing surfaces so that the bearings slide in a little easier. So I don't think the grease is terribly important for this step. So we're going to first install the right side bearing, which is the 6802, using our bearing press tool. We have 6802 insert here. When you're installing these bearings, you want to make sure that you're pressing on both races. That's why a bearing press tool is pretty key here. Otherwise, you might end up jarring the bearing and making it not rotate as well as it did out of the box. That works well. And we're going to zoom the camera out a bit so you can see this. All right, so you're going to tighten this down as hard as you can so that the bearing is flush against that inside track. All right, so we got the bearing inside there. I'm sure you can see that. Then we're going to install the bushing. Now the bushing has a tapered side to it. The tapered side faces the outside, so the cassette side of the Freehub body unit. Now we're going to install the right side 6803 bearing. Get it started right there. Get your 6803 press. Probably that same one again. Yep. And we'll tighten this down until it hits the inner lip as well. So you should be able to move the inside bushing, but it should not be loose. It's just kind of tight there between the two. It's the perfect size to fit in there. And then once you get the axle through here, it will align itself properly. All right, so here's a close-up of the Freehub body unit with these bearings installed. On the wheel side, we have the 6803 bearing that's spinning nice and freely now. On the cassette side, we've got the 6802 that's also spinning nice and freely. And inside of the two of those, we've got that spacer with the tapered side facing the cassette, so facing this side. Now let's get the Pawls and the C-ring back onto this. All right, so we got the 3 Pawls, we've got the C-ring, and we've got the outer seal. The Pawls have a profile here that matches the profile of the Freehub body unit, so they fit right in like that. There are 3 of them, and without the C-ring, they want to fall out. The easiest way to do this is to first find the key for the C-ring, so it has to go in with its opening pointing towards that. Okay, that's on there. The next step then is to take a pawl, use the little lip here to grab that, and then bend it into place. Same thing for this next one and for the third. Perfect. So now we got 3 Pawls. They're springing pretty well. If you notice that your Pawls are not springing back, it's likely because your C-ring isn't installed with this key in the proper position and it's sticking out a bit and there's not the right tension on these. All right, for the last part of the Freehub body unit assembly here, we're going to use our Shimano Freehub grease. Now this grease, in this case, still isn't terribly important. Where this more comes into play, I believe, is around the Pawls and in the body itself, in the actual hub. It's a bit of a lighter grease, a little less tacky than the multi-purpose grease. You could probably get away with using multi-purpose grease for this entire thing. I was having issues with this, so I went ahead and bought some of the Shimano specific Freehub grease. So we got that, some grease on the inside lip of this seal. All right, so we got the grease on the seal here. We're going to install that on the right side, the outer side of the Freehub body unit. So you can use one of your bearing presses here to push that into place. So that seal ring is in place now. All right, so that is the full reassembly of the Freehub body unit. Got our 2 bearings, we've got our spacer in there, our bushing, and we've got our Pawls installed with the C-ring around them. Now it's time to install the new bearings into our wheel. So these are the 6903 bearings. We're going to apply a light layer of the multi-purpose grease to the bearing surfaces. Again, Shimano recommends their premium grease for this. Any multi-purpose should do. This is just for the bearing surfaces. All right, we're going to install the left side bearing first. So for that, we're going to need our 6903 bearing press inserts. We're going to need our 6903 bearing. Get that lined up right there. insert in it. Beautiful. And then for this side, a 6805 looks like it'll work well. And we're going to press this in as tight as it'll go against that inner lip. All right, so there we go. We've got the left side 6903 bearing installed. Time to move on to the right. All right, with the wheel flipped over, we're going to get our hub axle and apply a very light coating of the multi-purpose grease to it. Less is more here, you don't need a ton. Now, we are on the right side of the wheel. This is the drive side. This is the left side of the hub axle. So we're going to insert that with the left side facing the left side of the wheel. That'll fit in like that. And then we have to install our second bearing over the axle and into the slot here. Now, the hard part here is being able to press on the bearing because our inserts aren't going to work here for this because of the hub axle. Over here, what the issue is if we try to push on this to press against the bearing, it's going to want to push the hub axle back out. So we're going to install our brake first before we do this so that we can use it to press against with our bearing tool. We'll go get our brake rotor. All right, so we're just putting this on temporarily so we can use it to push against. All right, now we've got a surface that is farther out than our axle to push against that lock nut. Now we take our new bearing and place it over the hub axle. We'll put a bad bearing on there as the to push against that. And then we're just going to use our Freehub body to press against this. Now when we start pressing, we're going to have to make sure that these Pawls are going to get in there. This isn't the ideal setup, but it's what we got, so we're going to work with it. Okay. Make sure your bearing's lined up. Start pressing. And when you get in here, make sure that your Pawls, because we're doing it this way, that your Pawls are going to go in there. We don't want to jam anything up. That one's getting tight. Let's pull that back a bit. Okay. All right, we'll make sure that bearing is in there as tight as possible. Take this back off. I need to take off our second press bearing there that was just used. There we go. We've got this bearing installed now, but we want to make sure it's pressed the whole way in. We want to make sure there's no slot between this. I don't think there is. We're going to do one more press though just to make sure. So we can install our Freehub body unit as the piece we're pressing against. We can use a bearing right here as our press piece so that we're not hitting the Freehub axle. Let's put this back inside here. Run that right there. Sounding good. Except it doesn't want to come out now. What did I do? Well, we've installed it permanently. Whoops. Well. There we go. Now we got to repress that. Okay, so we got the Freehub buddy stuck on there somehow. So we knocked it off, but now our axle's a little loose. So we are going to reinstall the brake rotor so we have something to press against. So we'll take one of the bad bearings and push it up against the good bearing. We'll put our Freehub body back on. Make sure the Pawls aren't going to be pressed into the side. There we go. We'll add this bearing right here, and then we will start tightening this down. All right, cool. Get that back off. Take this off. And now we just need to get that bearing out of there again. Beautiful. These are our two old bearings. They're scrapped. What we need to check here is that we don't have any side-to-side movement of the hub axle. So let's take this back off. And we don't. We don't have any play side-to-side. And we need to make sure that it rotates freely. And it does. So good. We've got those bearings installed properly. Everything feels good. Time for the rest of the assembly. All right, so now it's time for the left side assembly. We've got our left side seal ring and our left side end cap. First thing, we're going to take some of the Shimano premium grease or the generic general purpose grease here and apply it to the inside metal side of the seal ring here. And you're going to press that into place. All right, you can use a socket here to press that the whole way onto the bearing there. Now we need to thread on the left side lock nut. To do that, we'll insert our hex key into this right side hole. All right, then use your adjustable wrench to tighten this. The torque spec is 3 to 5 Newton meters, so it does not need to be very tight. Lovely. And that is the left side reassembly complete. Now onto the right side assembly. We're going to apply grease to 3 areas. So for this, we're going to use Shimano Freehub grease. We're going to put some on the inside here of these teeth. Again, with this, less is more. You don't need a ton. If you do put too much on, you may notice that your pawls don't want to engage. They'll want to get stuck. And then what you'll see is as you're pedaling, you'll miss engagements on this, and kind of it'll send you forward with each pedal stroke. So just a nice, thin layer in there. That's spot number 1. Spot number 2 is going to be around the outside seal here of the Freehub body. So we don't need to put anything inside the pawls here. They're going to get the grease they need from what we just applied to the teeth. So again, just a light coating around the outside of the body here. And then on the inside of the right side seal cap here. This is going to help prevent dirt and water from getting into our nice new bearings. Now on this area you can put more if you need to. And first we're going to want to reinstall the seal here. We can put a little bit more grease on that. This could be the premium or the general purpose. Alright, so we'll install this seal here. Press it down into place. Do not forget your spacer. Alright, place that right there. Alright, so we got the spacer in. Now we're going to install the Freehub body. Now Shimano recommends, if you can't see here, I'll get close up, there is a very fine lip around this seal. And what they want you to make sure is that when you install the Freehub body here, that lip is facing outward and not inward, so it's not tucked in. Yep, so this lip here, once you install the Freehub, make sure that's still facing this direction and not tucked back in to the inside of the unit here. So we got our Freehub body. Run that over, get that pushed down in there. All right, so the body's installed, and we hear that nice ratcheting. If you're not hearing that ratcheting, it could be that the bearings aren't pressed in far enough, so your pawls are rubbing against this rubber seal, or you've installed too much grease, and in that case, they won't want to click back and won't want to hit those teeth. So make sure you're hearing that. If you're not, you need to start over. All right, so now we'll install the seal cap. This has a flanged convex area pointing out. You want that to be pointing towards you. So this installs right under the Freehub body like that. And finally, we've got our right side end cap. It's a friction fit. Right onto that. Beautiful. All right, now Shimano states that the seal for the right end cap should be inside the body unit. So in this image right here, you cannot see the seal. If this was out a bit and the seal is visible, that means something is not compressed properly, the bearings aren't installed properly, or the Freehub body isn't installed properly. So as long as you're seeing that inside of there, you're good to go. Now the final thing we're going to check is to make sure that our axle can run through this properly. In the past, I've had issues where when I was hammering on the axle hub, I dented it or ovaled it out. So let's just check and make sure there's no tight spots on there. So, and we do have a tight spot. All right. So you see how the axle doesn't want to go through right there. What that'll do is cause the wheel to want to turn with the Freehub, so you're not going to have as free of a motion. So what we'll do is we're going to remove this right side end cap, and we're going to check to make sure the axle goes through here. That's not the issue, but it is sticking right there. So we can get a little piece of sandpaper here, roll it up. I'm just going to take the burr off the inside edge of this. And then make sure you clean this out too. You don't want to leave any of those shavings inside the hub axle there. Test again. Still catching. Much better. Let's make it just a little bit better. All right, see how it fits now. Much better. Okay. So that's an important part that's not in the Shimano manual, but I did find out the hard way by having my wheel basically connected to my Freehub at all times. So make sure your axle goes through your hub. All right, so now we can reinstall the right side end cap now that our axle goes through there. Beautiful. Let's make sure that's still a smooth fit. All right, much better. Let's continue with the left side. We'll put the brake rotor on. Now, if you've touched this with your hands, you're going to want to clean it off. Use some isopropyl alcohol and then it'll be good. Make sure that the text is facing out and install your lock nut. Now, the tightening torque for this is 40 Newton meters. I don't have a wrench here, a torque wrench for this, but be careful. These things want to jump off. Like that. Okay, we'll call that 40 Newton meters. Just put it on pretty tight. Now, flip that back over on the drive side. We need to reinstall our cassette. All right, so the cassette here comes in a bunch of pieces. In case you drop them all, you got your main body here. It's got a key to it that fits onto the Freehub. So, let's find that keying and install it right like that. Now, you've got 5 more gears, cogs that are going to go on here. Each one of these has a marking that says how many gears it has on it, how many teeth it has on it. This one's 18. Make sure that the text is facing out. You always want text facing out on these. Find the keying. All right. After the 18 tooth, you have a thick spacer. Then you've got your 16 tooth. Then a thin spacer. Next is your 14 tooth. Then your 12 tooth. All right, like that. And then you've got your 10 tooth. Now the 10 tooth fits into the 12 tooth, so it's a little different keying. But there are dots here that kind of send you down the cogs so that they're in the right spots. There we go. Got our cassette tool to tighten that up. We'll use our chain whip here to help us. The torque rating for this is also 40 Newton meters, just like the brake. Make it tight. All right, there we have it. Our wheel's fully rebuilt, brakes on, cassette's on, Freehub spinning beautifully. Let's get it back on the bike and try it out. All right, let's get the wheel back on. Come on, there we go. Our axle back through. This one here is 11 Newton meters, and we do have a torque wrench for that. All right, cool. That's a little tighter than they asked for, but that's okay. There goes the GoPro. Whoops. All right, so the wheel's installed. Let's see how it spins. That is better than I've seen it in months. This is my 3rd or 4th rebuild of this wheel because I have no clue what I'm doing. But we did a bunch of research, and now I have a clue, and it looks like we successfully did it. That sound is music to my ears. Let's get a close-up of it. Beautiful. Man, you do not know how happy that sound makes me. I've been struggling with this wheel for well over a month now and have not got it to turn over more than 3 or 4 times before it would stop. I've rebuilt it completely twice now, once in this video and once before. I've had it apart 5 or 6 times, removing grease, adding new grease, changing the grease I'm using, trying to get it to run it well again, sanding down that inside hub axle there, trying to get the axle to go through. I just had so many issues with this thing. So I've looked at every Shimano document they have for this. I've seen every video there is on this thing online. There's only seems to be one that I can find for this Deore hub. So I've compiled everything I can. This video hopefully will get you to a point where you can do this yourself. Shimano doesn't recommend that you remove the bearings out of the Freehub body. They want you to buy a new one. There's no reason you can't, and the 6803, 6802 bearings are very cheap. So there's links for everything in the description below, the bearings themselves, all the tools I've used, the greases that I was using, and links to all the manuals, videos, and stuff that I used to help me make this. I've also made my own step-by-step guide that shows using Shimano step-by-step how to do this, but it adds in the Freehub body disassembly and reassembly that they don't show. I did see the other video that's on YouTube here is from EV Mechanic, and that's linked below. He shows a whole disassembly, and he was real critical to getting me to be able to do this. I've watched his video first. The only confusing part there is he has 2 6803 bearings in his Freehub body unit. Everywhere I could find documentation-wise only shows one 6803 on the inside here and one 6802 on the outside. For some reason, his has two. I tried doing it that way first, but it made me remove the spacer. If I had the two bearings in there, I didn't have room for that spacer. In his video, he has both bearings in a spacer, so I'm not sure what's going on there. I did see comments on his video that talk about how they only have one bearing. I would recommend sticking with the spacer and a single 6803 bearing. That's what's worked well for me. The double bearing caused issues for me, and that may have been other factors as well, but that's my recommendation. So if you have any questions, leave a comment below. I know this pretty well now. I've put together all that documentation. Hopefully that helps you out. But if there are questions, I should be able to help you in the comments. Stay tuned for next week. We're going to take the SLX derailleur there and upgrade it to a Deore XT. It's a pretty easy swap over, but it's a nice fix that can save you some money. Again, thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you like what I'm doing. I'll see you next week.